Good day, YouTube. You can see behind me here, Jeep project's coming along very well. I want to talk about something near and dear to my heart today, and that's saving money. Okay? In a perfect world, you could go off to the store and buy everything already made for you, and all you had to do is bolt things up. But that's not really a reality for a lot of us. Most of us have been there. We got some old used car, or maybe you just had your car a long time and you go in one morning and you start driving and the light changes red, you push your foot down on the brake pedal and it goes clear to the floor. All right, next thing you know, you're pumping your brakes like a madman and downshifting like a fool so you don't put your car through the rear end of some Honda in front of you. All right, brake lines, they go. They rust, especially in the damper, colder climates like we got up here in Canada. On a whim, I went online because I'm doing a new build here. I'm basically building a new Jeep out of old parts. And I said, well, let's see what new brake lines, complete, pre-bent, all the fittings and everything cost. And I just about had a stroke. $209 plus, I think it was $70 in shipping because of the size of the packaging involved, right? Some of these lines are pretty long. Okay, well, I ain't spending that for brake lines. That's absolutely ridiculous. Then I did what most people would do in that situation. You break a brake line, so you go into your auto parts store and you buy a pre-cut and flared line with the fittings already on it. A lot of these things are $20 for like 2 feet of line. And it never fits right. Then you got to mess around with connectors and all the other. 9 times out of 10, you start turning a brake line, it's going to strip or break the one beside it, and then you go back to the store to replace another one. Or you do the smart thing and go buy yourself a 25-foot roll of steel brake line, steel tubing. Comes in all the diameters you'd ever need. All right, 3/16. This one costs $15 for 25 feet. All right, I see in a few places online that are charging $50 for this. I think it's criminal. They should be jailed. Okay, so the reality is you only need a couple of tools to do your own brakes and fuel lines. One of them is a tubing cutter, which you can get at any hardware store for a couple of bucks. There's nothing to them. There's so many different types that I'm not even going to list them off. I got 2 or 3 different ones here. A double flaring set. This is your biggest expenditure. I think I paid $40 for this one like 15 years ago, and I use it all the time. You have to get the double flares when you're doing brake lines. Single flares don't seal right. All right. Okay, the other tool, which is totally optional, and I've done lots of brake lines without them, is some sort of a bending tool. It's really more important when you're doing tight bends and tight spots. Okay, you can buy one of these cheapies here, which does one size. This one's 3/16, and it'll do a nice small radius bend like you see. Or you can buy a slightly more expensive one like this, which does about the same radius, but it'll do 3 or 4 different sizes depending on what you buy, and they're not that expensive either. Last thing is some fittings. You buy them the same place you get your line. You get them off of Amazon for like $3 for 20 in a package of assorted ones. Why would you buy anything else, in my mind? Or your local auto parts store will usually sell you a bunch. So you got your little clamping tool here. I put it in a vise because it's easier to deal with, but you don't have to. You can do it on vehicle. It's just a little bit more work. So the first thing you got to do is obviously match up your line 1/4 inch, and then you use this flaring tool as a guide. You put it upside down, and what you're doing here is you're measuring the height. That's how much is going to be above the tool. So this bottom flange here. Once you're at that, you're good. Then you take it and put it inside the tip like so. Okay, so you're going to use this next, and it just goes in like so, and you crank it down, put it in your little T-handle, and just turn it down. Make sure you're good and tight, because it will slip. There's a fair bit of force there. And all you're doing with this part is you're going to bottom out that double flaring adapter. Okay. And you'll know when it's bottomed out. It gets, all of a sudden you just can't turn it anymore. Okay, that's what you're looking for. So, a nice inverted flare. Now you're not done yet. The next thing you're going to do is put the tool on by itself, okay, without the adapter. You're going to put it directly into the tube. And you're going to turn that down a little bit. Now, you don't want to go too far. You can actually damage it. That's basically what you're ending up with. Alright, roll your fitting back up and just test it. You can see if it's off center or messed up. Okay, last thing obviously is you've already chosen your route of how you're routing the line along the frame or along the firewall or wherever it's going. So you roughly know how you're doing it. You don't have to go the way the old one was, right? If you see a simpler and more logical design, then go with your gut. Okay, one thing when you're most likely going to be laying under a car doing this, make sure when you're feeding your lines through wherever, you don't jam the end into the ground. Get dirt and mud and whatever in there. If you do have to wiggle it through some precarious terrain within the frame rails or on the ground, whatever, just put a little bit of tape over the end. Right? Keep the end as clean as you can. You can take the tape off before you screw it in. So leave that in loose. And now you can do your fine adjustments. So just use your hands. Right? You don't want it resting on any sharp corners where it can vibrate, because that will wear out a hole in the line and you'll be doing this again. I think on the factory one it goes out and around the shock. I don't know why. It seems more logical to me to put it under the shock. There's plenty of room and it ain't going to hit nothing. And it's more protected there than anywhere else that I can think of. Like I said, you can just bend it with your hands as long as you're not doing too sharp of a bend. If you're going really tight, use the bending tool. Okay, so you can see I've got both ends screwed in. That's the way I want to route my line. Okay, last thing I'm going to do is use some of these little hold down brackets. They got the rubber on them. Anytime you use something like this, this is where your line is going to rust out. Right? Water or moisture will get trapped in there up against the line, and this is where they go. But you have to, because you can't leave your line flopping around like this. So that bracket right there I made out of some old scrap steel. It's a 2-inch drop to compensate for the 2-inch lift of the springs. That way I can use a stock flex line and not have to spend a bunch of money on something you don't need. There's the line I just made. Alright, a couple of brackets like I said to hold it. No vibration there at all. Runs along the frame. I put another one here on the exhaust hanger. So that line there is your pretty much your biggest brake line on this thing. And it cost me, I don't know, I'd say less than $5 to make that. Nothing to it. And you see there's the fuel line I made yesterday. Same basic idea. And that goes all the way up to the fuel pump. Alright, so with one flaring kit, you can do every line on your vehicle. The only line I got left to do is my fuel return line. And I will have accomplished all my brake lines for the grand old sum of, let's see, 2 rolls of line and $5 worth of fittings. About 45 bucks for all my brake lines. So that's 1/4 of what... 1/4 of what you could have bought the pre-bent lines, not counting shipping, if you couldn't pick it up yourself. Right, nothing to them.